Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Diane Bell. I'm our Community Development Director here. Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis, who's our Senior Minister, is on vacation today, and we are blessed to have a wonderful guest speaker. Our beloved Rabbi Ted Falcon is here with us today. Yes? Fabulous. So before we get to that part, though, we have a few traditions. For those of you who've been here, coming here for a while, you know. Our first is that we take out our smartphones, if you have one, and check into Facebook. And so let your friends and your network know that this is how you spend your Sunday mornings. And our hope is that they're going to get curious one of these days and say, where do you go? And you can tell them that you come here to get spiritually fed. And then another tradition that we have is to make sure that everyone feels connected here. And so if this is one of your first times coming here and you would like to get more connected, look for a connection card. And these will be in the seat backs in front of you, and they're also in various places in the lobby. And fill one of these out, and you can get connected with our community. We'll send you emails about what's happening here, and Reverend Kathy Ann sends out a weekly spiritual practice that you'll get via email as well. And one of my favorite traditions is that we honor everyone here as being special and important. And so we celebrate birthdays here. And so if it's your birthday today, or it was last week, or next week, stand up so we can give you a gift. Happy birthday. And today is the beginning of Volunteer Appreciation Week. And so we want to take a moment today to show our gratitude to all the wonderful volunteers that are such an important part of this community. So if you are a volunteer here at Center for Spiritual Living, please stand up so that we can honor and recognize you. And let's give them a hand. Thank you all so much. Do you know that there are over 250 people in our community that are actively volunteering on an ongoing basis, and we really could not do it without you, so we're so grateful. And if you are not yet volunteering and you'd like to find a way where you can get connected and shine your light in our community, there's a volunteer sign-up table out in the lobby across from the registration desk. So I am now going to invite Reverend Deborah Gay up on stage, and she is going to lead us in meditation and reflection. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Diane. I just want to mention that Friday night, Deepak Chopra was here. And every single seat, I think I saw 6 empty seats in this auditorium. Well, it was an incredible experience of meditating together, the power of that connecting together. So I invite us in to have that same powerful experience together today. Our dear musicians will sing us in to that inner place, and then I'll lead us in prayer. There is peace in the stillness of this moment. So let us breathe in together and release. For it is through the breath, as Deepak Chopra reminded us, that spirit enters our physical form. And so we breathe together as community, entering into that inner space, that place that is the center of your center, that place where you touch your inner divinity. It is from this place that we know peace. It is from this place that we feel that connection of our individual life with all life. And it is from this place that we feel the love that pulsates through life and pulsates through each one of us. And so today we walk, we speak, and have our being knowing we are grounded in this inner divinity. And we see that in each other. We see the divinity in each face, the love beaming back to us in each face, the soul of each one rising above the comings and goings, the ups and downs, and the ins and outs of life. And so it is this morning, in this perfect place, that we hear the word of a special word from Rabbi Ted, that special song that is sung this morning, that perfect prayer that touches your heart, that opens the door to your next step. And so in the deepest of gratitude for being with each one of you this morning, I say, and so it is. Aaron and James Howard, what a team. And the rest of our CSL band. Sometimes I think we forget how privileged we are to have such fantastic musicians. Oh, thank you. What is my joy and pleasure to give you a little bit of an introduction to Rabbi Ted, who, by the way, told me not to say too much. But I'm going to ignore him. Just because if you have not yet met Rabbi Ted, I want to just tell you a little bit about him. He is such a gem in our community. So Rabbi Ted shares the spiritual gifts of Judaism, realizing that it is one of the authentic spiritual traditions of the world, of humanity. So he is a teacher, a counselor, and a speaker. And in all of this, he is affirming the integrity of the individual, each of us, but always with a generous dose of his own gentle humor to make his point. So he was ordained in 1968. He also has a doctorate in psychology. And so his work of his life has been around the nature of meditative and mystical states of consciousness. Very much what we talk about here. He's worked to bridge psychology and spiritual realms to encourage that integration for more freedom and more understanding of each of us, self-understanding. So he moved to Seattle in 1993, where he and his wife, Ruth, founded Beit Olif Meditative Synagogue. Now, this is a new model that Reverend Ted developed, a meditative synagogue, which was born out of his own need to explore this form of Jewish worship. So he completed his final year as the senior rabbi in 2009, so he could then focus his life on writing, teaching, and spiritual counseling. He was a scholar in residence at the Unity Church in Bellevue for 2010 and 2011. So I ask you now to open your heart and welcome to this beautiful being of love and light, a friend of CSL, Rabbi Ted Falcon.
You could stay standing. It's It's always a joy for me to be here. I love to watch James play. But actually, it's Aaron who captures my attention. I know you don't sound surprised. Every time I hear her, she gets better and better, and I don't even see how that's possible. We're blessed in this place. In addition to the other things I do, for the past 14 years, I've been working with Imam Jamal Rahman, whom you know, and Pastor Don McKenzie, and we've become known as the Interfaith Amigos. From time to time, we've actually presented here together. And as we tour the country, we're apt to begin our programs by noting that things are not going so well in this world. That no matter how much we strive to talk to each other and to understand each other, we just keep killing each other. We keep hating each other. We keep demonizing each other. And it's always been that way. Like we get born into it. We get born into a place where we know dry because we know wet. We know soft because we know hard. We know warm because we know cold. On this level of reality, we know things by their opposite. And that's how it is. Which is fine for getting around on this level of reality. But it's not so fine for trying to do the things that the opposites don't work so well in. Because what we wind up doing is seeking change to make things better. And seeking change to make things better is what we've been doing for thousands of years. Historians now admit that there has never been a time in all of recorded history when there hasn't been at least one war raging somewhere on this planet. It's like, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? None of us actually like that. And yet, time and time and time again, we get trapped into it. And we almost always get trapped into it by feeling like if we don't fight, we'll be attacked. We live our life sometimes feeling like we have to defend ourselves from onslaughts from others. If it's not others' judgments, then sometimes it's others' actions. Somehow trying to assert our own place. And I figured out whose fault it is. With that, I'll conclude. It's obviously the first man and the first woman. You remember them, you know the story. The story's myth. The wonderful thing about myth is it never happened, and it always happens. And the myth is excellent. You know, the myth is these people are somehow existing in this garden of pleasure, this paradise, this Eden. All they have to do to get their food is pluck it off trees. In rabbinic literature, if you wanted, they imaged that if you wanted bread, you just went to the bread tree. I mean, there was a proliferation of food trees, way beyond just fruit. But we were vegan. We didn't know any better, so it wasn't a category. And into that peaceful place came the serpent. I love the serpent. It was so maligned. But the serpent was doing God's work in the myth. Listen, God says to these people, the garden is yours. You can eat of every tree in the garden except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that's at the center of the garden. Don't touch that or you'll die. Now, what do you think? I mean, human psychology has just not changed that much. You can sit on any bench in the park, but don't touch the one that's just been painted. So the serpent comes and says to the woman, hey, look at this fruit. And the woman looks. The woman says, listen, we can't even touch it because we'll die. She exaggerates a little bit. The serpent says, you're not going to die. When you take the fruit, you're not going to die. But your eyes will be opened. And she looks at the tree and she sees that it is good for food. And she sees that it's beautiful to look at. And she sees that it's good to make one wise. Very, very carefully constructed. It's good for the body, it's good for the heart, it's good for the mind. And she makes that choice. And she takes the fruit and she gives it to Adam. And Adam eats the fruit. He doesn't even ask. Listen, there's a little aside there. In the story, you got the first use of anesthesia, where God casts a sleep on the man so that he can take what's usually translated a rib. It's not a rib, it's from the side. At first, these two beings were imagined conjoined side by side. That's another story. So he cast a deep sleep. It never says he woke him up. Enough said about that. The woman takes, they both eat, and from that choice, their reality is radically altered. Radically altered. They become separate beings. They know separation. The tree, the knowledge of good and evil, up and down, here and there, past and present, the opposites. They eat of the tree and they become the singularity manifesting as the many. It's choice. We forget that it was choice. In order for the singularity to manifest as the many, and here we are, there has to be separation and there has to be polarization. We can't manage on this realm without it. Our physical bodies require it. Our sensations, our perceptions require it. We could not know sweet without knowing bitter. We could not know easy without knowing difficult. There'd be no way. We could not know a nice day without living in Seattle. Says that somewhere in the Bible. The problem is, we forgot we made the choice. It was the right choice. You know, people think that that was some kind of sin in the garden, in the myth, but if you look at the text, nowhere is it called a sin. There are consequences. There are consequences. But it's not a sin. There's consequences of the one expressing as the many. Sometimes I feel terribly sorry for God because God loses control of what those consequences are. So somewhere she's watching all the manifestation of hatred rather than acceptance, rather than love. But that's entrusted to us. So we, each of us, are born into this, and we construct, each of us, a separate institution. I know we don't normally call it that, but it's an institution that each of you are residing in at this very moment. And it's your personality. Incidentally, they eat, and what do they see? They're naked. And they try to get fig leaves to cover them up. What's your image? The image is they took fig leaves and tried to cover up their privates. Like, I don't think so. They took fig leaves and tried to make some kind of outer form so that on the outside they'd manifest the separateness they were suddenly experiencing on the inside. And in the myth, God clothed them in garments of skin. You know what animal skin he clothed them with? It's a beautiful myth. This skin. We were not separate enough yet. The choice of separate was this choice to become manifest as separate expressions of what essentially is one. But we did it so well. Look, each of you sitting in the middle of a personality, your persona, right? The who you are in the world. It's got a name. You got a name. You think of yourself with this name. There's a voice inside your head which is telling you all the time what's what in the world, both outside and inside. A remarkable voice. If any of our friends talk to us like our inner voice talks to us, we wouldn't stay with them for very long. But we got so convinced that this is who we are, that we've wound up trapped in a place of polarization. We forgot that this is a choice. Each of us, with great wisdom, selected a personality which would enable us to get as much as possible the things we needed from our environment. And we obviously succeeded. The goal was survival, and here we are. One of the problems, though, is that nobody sat us down at the end of that childhood and said, by the way, that personality you constructed, which is successful, is a conditional self. And if you want the world to change, your experience to change, you're going to have to deal with that in some way. Because if you maintain the same personality, you're going to take the same drama of the world with you for your whole lives. Interesting. Conscious. problem is we go unconscious. We go unconscious to what we have done. If we created our personalities as a mechanism of survival, where's the one who created it? It's almost like we got into the personality and closed the door to that one who, out of brilliance, created this. Sometimes I despair looking at the unconsciousness in myself and in others. One of my favorite places to see it is in the recycle bin. We live in a condo and there are big recycle bins. Actually, every year they've had to add more bins. Why? Because it says empty your bags so that all the stuff can fit in. It's full of bags. It says no boxes with food in it. It's full of pizza boxes. I finally decided this might not mean that people are evil. It might not mean that people really are in favor of destroying the planet. But it surely means they're unconscious. And the darn trouble with being unconscious is that we're unconscious to what we're unconscious of. It's like having a blind spot. How can I know what my blind spot is if it's my blind spot? The truth is there are ways to know, because all we got to watch is our reactivity, the things that upset us. And we can learn a lot about what we're not conscious of. But the task, once we accept the fact that we spend most of our lives unconscious, is to ask the question, okay, how do we become conscious? How do we do this? Well, we don't do this by trying to reshape the world out there, because we've been trying to do that for millennia. And it might dawn on us finally that even though the ego tells us that's the way to do it, it won't work. We can't isolate the bad guys and get rid of them and think that'll make things better, because it never has. It never has. So we've got to look at the ego and go, yes, I know those feelings and those thoughts occur, but they're not going to work. You're going to have to do something else. And the something else ultimately is going to be returning to that initial choice. Because the choice that woman and man made, that mythic choice, is a choice that each and every one of us made. I believe we made it before we manifested in this body. This body was not the beginning of our existence. It was the beginning of our personality, but it was not the beginning of our existence. And if we can remember that we created this personality, then we know that the resources that we require, in fact, to find the world that can save itself, dwells within each and every one of us. It is that creative presence who created the personality. My goodness. I mean, just think of it. If each of us had within us the awareness that we did all this, for better or for worse, We did it. Where is the one who did it? And how do we get back to that one? Because there are certain things that polarization will not help us with. Polarization we need. It's the only way we can operate on this level. You want to drive a car? You want to build a house? You want to work a job? We live in the land of polarization. And our task is to become as comfortable as possible with that. Every light casts a shadow. You want to try to say that, no, I want only light. But the shadow's going to come up to bite you. Can't help it. Sorry. That's just how it is. So there's a key. There's a key to entering that precious territory behind the ego. That precious space in consciousness which has the creativity, the wisdom to manifest through us the kind of love and the kind of compassion and the kind of clarity that the ego cannot do. Not because it's bad, just because it's always operating in the land of polarization. And the path beyond polarization is deceptively simple. I could say it in a word, but don't be fooled. It's the hardest thing in the world for the ego to do. The word is acceptance. The path behind our personality, the path behind our ego, the path beyond the consciousness of polarization is called acceptance. That means, quite simply, accepting all the thoughts that are jumbling in our mind, all the judgments that are jumbling around us, all the perceptions, all the feelings, all the sensations. Ego goes crazy. Ego goes, if I accept everything, then I'm stuck in it. I've got to fight against it, or I'll be lost in it, and it's exactly opposite, and all of you know that. It is our anger, it's our upset, it's our guilt, it's our recriminations that keep us locked in that land of polarization. So it gets to a place where I need to look into those recycle bins. Really. It happened this week. Yesterday I went to them. It doesn't get picked up till Monday. By yesterday, it was astonishing. I lifted it up, totally full. Bags, boxes not broken down. And I laughed. It was the first time. It may be the only time. But something shifted. Something shifted. And I realized, we're not going to help people be conscious by getting angry at them. We're not going to help ourselves get conscious by being angry at ourselves. Dang. Really, ego likes nothing better than righteous indignation. Oh, God. Just juice. Love it. Acceptance. And practicing the peace that we would like to be. Practicing the peace we would like to be on an inner level behind the personality. Not trying to make the personality totally peaceful, because it's a waste of time. Could make the personality more gentle, but the personality is going to know up and down and here and there. That's its job. But affirming its job and loving it for doing its job and accepting it even when the judgments are unacceptable. So the practice, while simple, is challenging. It's like allowing us to be aware of what the voice is telling us about ourselves and about our world, and responding to that, responding to every thought, to every feeling, to every memory, to every yearning, to every condemnation, whether it's a condemnation of self or other, with simply an acknowledgement, noticing. Noticing. Yes, that's a feeling. Yes, that's a thought. Yes, that's a judgment. Interesting. Because as soon as we do that, another judgment will pop up, another thought will pop up, another feeling will pop up, and greet that with that acceptance. And greet the next thing with that acceptance, and from that acceptance, another realm that is ours. It was already ours before we opened our eyes on this level. A realm that is ours that contains the creativity and the wisdom that we need to save our planet. You know, both Hindu and Kabbalistic traditions teach that this is not the first time we've tried this experiment of creation. In the Kabbalistic tradition, this is the fifth. And one might imagine that we've gotten to this point before, whether mythically or real, who knows. But you can feel it. We look out at the world and we see things falling apart and we go, what can we do? And what we can do is be peace. Be peace. Practice. You can't do it without practice, darn it. It's not instant. So this afternoon I want to look at some of our particular personal issues that drag us into polarization and offer some things specifically which we can do. Right now, I want to talk in a general way. I'm kind of stomping around talking about a project called Take 10 for Peace. It's a simple project. It's to commit oneself to taking a minimum of 10 minutes a day to practice peace. And practicing peace doesn't mean practicing everybody agrees with us. Everybody becomes a raging capitalist. Practicing peace is practicing on the other side of those polarizations. So it's a practice of acceptance. And that practice of acceptance awakens our connection to ourselves. That practice can give our egos, our personality, the one thing that personality yearns for more than anything else, and the one thing it can never give itself: unconditional love, unconditional acceptance. The path to peace is practicing love for oneself. Because from that love, peace is born. A dynamic kind of peace that flows from our awakening to our wholeness. A kind of peace that infuses our actions, our thoughts, our world. We become truly emissaries of the singularity of which we are the multiplicity in appearance. So I'd like to offer you the opportunity to do that right now. And it comes down to this. It comes down to realizing I am exactly where I want to be. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. I am with exactly the people I want to be with. And I am exactly the one I want to be. And if you think about it, they're obvious truths. It's just we don't operate that way. But it's time. It's the language of acceptance, reaching behind that ego, behind that personality, behind the compelling polarizations of our time. So I'd like to invite you to repeat these sentences after me. I am exactly where I want to be. Okay, so now ramp it up about 2.5. You are, obviously. I am doing exactly what I want to be doing.
I am doing exactly what I want to be doing.
Yeah. I'm with exactly the people I want to be with.
I'm with exactly the people I want to be with.
I am exactly the one I want to be. Yeah, that's the beginning, and that's the end, and it's all one. Thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you, thank you. So it's been a beautiful morning. I just want to share a few things. I believe going behind me, yes, is a slideshow of different kinds of drop-in groups that are occurring this afternoon. So there is always a place for you to find other people, a place to share, a place to connect, to get support for a thriving life. And I want to share with you that Rabbi Ted, in his 10 Minutes for Peace, has given us a tool. So he has a CD in the lobby of 3 different guided meditations. And you'll meet his wife, Ruth, out at that table. So I ask our ushers to come forward and join me. And I ask you, if you would bring out your financial support to the center, hold that in your hand. And then we'll all hold our hand to our heart. It's simply a way of connecting, reminding ourselves of the divinity within, and that we gather together to share that knowing together, that experience together, as Rabbi Ted has so beautifully reminded us. Yes, we are separate individuals, and yet we're part of the whole. And so we experience the truth of both of these things. And let us remind ourselves of his statements. Yes, I am exactly where I want to be. I am exactly with the people I want to be with. I am doing exactly what I want to be doing. And I am perfectly the person I want to be. And so we affirm this truth, this knowing, and our experience of all 4 aspects of this truth. And I am so grateful for each one of you being here this day. And I affirm that with you by saying, and so it is.